Hi, everyone.
Hi,
Happy International Women's Day.
thank you.
And thanks for joining us. And my name is Chani Sims. I'm the founder of CISO Exec, which is an open give back platform for cybersecurity, leadership, and we're actually trying to create emotionally intelligent cybersecurity leaders. So today we are running, actually, this is a launch of a new series of podcasts with some brilliant women in the industry to highlight their skills, abilities, and show them how awesome they are. So we got two superstars joining here today. We got Nicola Whiting and Suki Fuller. So I'm not going to talk too much about them because I'm going to let them talk about themselves. And yeah, so I think the topic of the podcast is about equality, and that's this year's topic for International Women's Day. And we're going to talk about how to build self-esteem, confidence, and also how to support each other. So thank you, Suki and Nicola, for joining. And I would like to ask Suki to go first and introduce yourself, please.
I don't know what to say. Hi, I'm Suki. so I'm Suki Fuller. I am an analytical storyteller. What does that mean? It means that I marry the quantitative with the qualitative. I tell people that I tell the story of data. I help those that really pull together all that information. I help them explain it to other people that don't understand. And also those people that don't understand, I help them understand so that they can take that and make an actionable decision. What else do you want to know?
Oh, I want to know how
I'm
you got to
British.
where you
I'm
are.
British, a British American. So yes, even though I have this American accent, this snazzy thing, I have two passports. I was born in Balham, South London, and I grew up a little bit globally, but mostly in the US. That's where I got my university education and started my career. How did I get into this field? Ooh, long story. Started out in chemical engineering, didn't like it. It fed the quantitative side of my brain, but not the qualitative. Stopped that. Always wanted to be a little bit of James Bond, MQ, Indiana Jones, and Poirot. So this career field of intelligence, I got an intelligence studies degree. Got into the field of intelligence, which is national security and also a little bit of law enforcement and competitive intelligence on the corporate side. And that was through a degree program at my alma mater, Mercyhurst University. Had to give a shout out because I got an intelligence studies degree, which meant when I walked out the door, I could become an intelligence analyst. So the technology side really has always been there as a little thread. My dad works in computer engineering, so I always wanted to kind of one up him, which is why I became a chemical engineer. That didn't quite work out. But so he still gave me, that whole computer thing is still there. And the technology part was I became a technology intelligence analyst. So I started out my intelligence career in that area. So yep, that's it. I think that was long enough. I don't think you guys need, you people, I don't know if it's guys or women, whatever, need to hear anymore. Over to you, Nicola.
Well, how do I follow that? I'm following Q from M Branch, who's in Travel International. So I am Nicola Whiting. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of Titania, and yeah, I fell into cybersecurity for the second time in my career with Titania because I actually got fed up with cybersecurity. I used to be in databases and then remote control software, and yeah, the early years of cyber pretty much sucked for women. It's actually way better now. I mean, I know women tend to think it's not as welcoming, but it's so much more welcoming than it was back then. And what I did is I went and became a global international jewelry designer and the chairman of a guild of craftsmen, and made my name in design. And then I came back to my hometown, and some friends came to me and said, look, we're building a business, can you help? Because we're not really sure what to do commercially. And I'm a bit of a Babel fish. I know Suki mentioned that, so I'm quite good at translating complex topics and technologies into something that the everyman would understand. And that's actually something I do now for mentoring cyber accelerators for Department of Industry and Trade. And it's one of the things with technologists that they're often really, really brilliant, but if you can't explain something in a way that most people can get, then you can't leverage their networks. And if most people know 250 people and you kind of start looking at that, if you can't say your unique proposition quite easily and simplify it, then you're not going to really grow as much as you'd like. So that's where I started. But then with Titania, I've probably been in the industry for the second time around, another sort of 10 years. And being autistic, I don't know how to do anything other than deep dive into whatever subject I get interested in. So I accidentally became a perceived expert in all kinds of things like ransomware and AI and the future of AI and the risks of not having diversity in our industry. And I got given many awards for this stuff, and I was always gobsmacked because I think one of my proudest moments was receiving something called the Sparky Baird Award from Signal magazine that works with AFSIA in the US military, and I've written quite a long article for them on the future of cyber warfare and the move from physical warfare into cyber. And it was a bit like winning a Pulitzer, because the Signal magazine is like the British Journal for doctors, and I'd written something, and then they gave me this award. And I can remember the editor of the magazine came up to me on the day they gave me this award, and said that the judges had been unanimous in saying that I could get this prize, and a professor of cybersecurity had said it was one of the best things that he'd ever read. And at that moment, being somebody that sometimes finds it difficult to control my emotions, I burst into tears of gratitude. Oh my goodness, thank you so much! But boo-hoo. And awesome. So I it's been quite a journey, really, and I think that has then let me take some of that journey and use it to help inspire people and to move them along on their career. And I'm all for supporting women, because I've had so much support, and I'm a big believer in paying it forward and paying it back. So yeah.
Thanks, Nicola. And you recently won got an MBE. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah.
So this year I've been doing a lot of judging. So I was named for I think the third year in a row as one of the top people of influence in the UK from SC magazine. So I've been a judge for them this month. And then I've also been a judge for the National Cyber Awards, where I was named the UK Cyber Citizen. And really the MBE was for my work in international trade and diversity, but all of that kind of plays into that. So it's the mentoring, and it's being a spokesperson for things like the neurodiversity in our industry as well. Obviously, being an autistic person, I can speak from first-hand experience, but for me, diversity is about every type of diversity: ethnicity, sexuality, religious diversity, because attackers come in all forms, don't they? And if we're going to stand a chance of understanding how they work, we have to come in all forms too. Otherwise, we're limiting our own ability to be resilient and innovative.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Suki, you also won an award. Do you want to say a quick word about that?
MBE, Suki's award. No. So I became a fellow. We have the Council of Competitive Intelligence Fellows.
Wow.
And it is pretty much, I guess I know I have to own this. It is the top people within the field of competitive intelligence. So these are people that have worked for, a lot of them in national security in the US, some of them here in the UK, former directors of the FBI, the NSA, the CIA, people from MI5. So, yeah, So there's only 96 in the whole world. I became one of the 96.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
That's
yeah.
You're
fantastic.
like, yeah,
It's
yeah.
but I d-
It's
but
awesome.
it's I mean, I was nominated based on the fact that I am always sort of on the edge of the technology. I'm always one of the, I wouldn't say I'm a futurist, but in that field, I'm very much a futurist. I was one of the first people to talk about using Twitter to gather intelligence back when it first started, back in 2007. But a lot of the things that I've done have been sort of behind a wall, because in the intelligence world, it is behind a wall. So in the recent years, it's more talking and speaking publicly about what you do just in the corporate side. But a lot of the stuff that I have done was pretty formative in the early years of social media and technology. So yeah. So now my focus is more fifth industrial revolution, but I'm looking at the sixth. I'm looking at the grandchildren's 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 grandchildren, more like generation, November or something.
Dang, I almost want to congratulate you and sort of say, no, it was your fault that they're spying on us on Twitter. But no,
Uh,
amazing.
no, I didn't tell them to do that. I merely was actually doing it when I was researching projects, and there's so much information that was out there in the beginning. I mean, everybody's talking about geotagging now, but it was always there. It was, in the early days of Twitter, it was platforms like Bright Kite and, a lot of platforms that no longer exist. And you could do that. Foursquare, before it was, what was it before it was Foursquare? I can't remember, but before it was Foursquare, and people were checking in all the time. And before, it was just not always about having an app that did that, but really just looking at people's feeds and where they said they were going and where they worked and
Yeah.
where they lived. And, hey, I'm walking my dog around this park, and yeah, I'm nearly home. It's kind of like, oh, well, I kind of figured out where you live. Now it's just a lot more specific.
Oh my God, and you've got
So
a whole generation of people taking pictures of their ID badges. And I just like,
it stabs me in the heart every time I see people not realizing the connectivity of all the things that they're using. That's like my pet peeve. Every talk I do, I talk about connected data. I'm going, people, stop it, and stop the share renting. Don't put your kid picture on that. What?
Oh
Oh,
my
stop.
God.
and now
I'm with
they're
you on
adding
that. It's crazy.
blockchain to store it
Oh
all
yeah,
on the
let's
basis
make
that it
it.
will never be unencrypted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's make it transparent. I'm like, no, we just need transparency in, I don't know, industry, our food, you know, our supply chain, not the people chain, not the people chain. Do
No,
not do that to your face. And everybody
no.
says, oh, but it's more convenient. And that's the thing. I mean, I know you're seeing it with everybody's always buying into, oh, it's so convenient.
Convenient. Do you want to go for whom?
Exactly. For them to make money and
Yeah.
you to lose your privacy. And
Yeah.
security does not exist.
Yeah. It's. Can
And
you?
Sorry, Charlie, we're off on.
I sometimes think, when you go and tell these kind of things to people, they look at you like, who the hell are you? Like, like we are the
like you're
baddies.
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
So,
And then what happens, you see what it comes out in the news, a good 2 years later when we're all saying, and I know you know this,
sometimes I can't wait for the
this is
day.
bad,
Um,
don't do this.
yeah,
And then, 2 years later, it comes out in some big expose and we're going, I told you so.
Yeah.
and you think when there is going to be a law that
Like
will
things,
say that
like
you can.
sorry.
Sorry, go.
You should do the series of things like they did on Love Actually with the dropping like things and predict stuff and then just pull the video out and say, here's the video where I told you that one.
Yeah.
Told you so. Hold my drink.
Yeah.
Hold
And
my juice.
The thing is,
and
people who say I told you so are always people's favorite people, aren't they? Not.
no,
I
yeah,
know.
exactly. That's the thing. You become the least favorite person when you
We
keep
go.
killing these things. And I was reading about this thing, where the day that where you can sue your parents for putting your picture when you were a kid.
Yeah.
You didn't have to come.
I
Yeah.
tell people this all the time. Did you see last year there was a baby that was born on 9/11, weighed 9 pounds, and they did like a whole spread in the US, a whole article about this kid. They put her name, her full name. So they've got their full name, the date of birth, the parent's name, and that when you tell the hospital already narrows it down to city, state, and country of birth. Then all that stuff. That kid was just born. I was like, every people are going to write about this kid.
Well,
That's
even negating that, I mean, that's half of the stuff that you put in a password.
exactly,
Writer.
that is the average person's password.
Yeah,
A
it's
whole
crazy.
fake ID persona of that child before she's even 2 days old.
Do you know
They're
what?
already using that.
They should just create fake people that are
Yeah.
10 years later when they've created all the fake IDs. That'd be really cool.
Side project. But it really does blow my mind.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
I've
think
kind of even stopped telling people sometimes, just like they look at you like you're the alien. So just, whatever, dude, you can do whatever you like, and then get sued by the kid later on.
women were probably more aware because there are too many people out there that do, they always want to sort of say negative things to us, or enact and troll us. So we're very much aware of the ills that can occur.
Did you see the thing that Eva put out recently, where it was she did a TED talk on stalkerware, and it was one of her most.
Oh, no.
I was simultaneously like, well, that's awesome, and then that's also quite terrifying. That because I'm like, well, I'm hoping that it's all women finding out how to block stalkers rather than men taking notes.
Yeah.
The thing is, there were some crazy women out there too. So.
Yeah, that's true. I've had a stalker. It's not pleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, nobody does that to me. I
Don't say it.
one or
You have
two.
another one. I've been stalking you.
Oh yeah, that's different. But one or two people have. I've never had any really negative interactions, and I think it's because I always shut it down.
Yeah.
I think probably it might just be my personality. Like I don't give you the opportunity
Yeah.
to say anything, because I kind of I cut it before it's even get there, and just like, yeah, and if you want to do this, don't. I know people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just block them. And then
Sorry, we
yeah.
got sidetracked. We keep getting
I know.
sidetracked.
Yeah. Let's go back to the topic. So we want to talk about actually
We'll
the
remind people, if you have a question, put it in the chat so she can read it out, and you can ask questions.
yeah, exactly. I don't know where the chat is. Let me just get there. So I haven't seen any chats so far, but if you have any chats,
Just
just
listening to us,
questions,
just
yeah, put
chatting
us on
away.
the chat line, and we'll read it out. And you get the last 15 minutes. Actually, we're going to open the lines for you guys to talk and ask questions as well. So we got 3 people on the call. So the topic actually I wanted to ask is your thoughts about the each for equal hashtag, each for equal and or equality. In my case, I mean, for me, personal opinion is that we are in 2020, and why are we still talking about equality? I get embarrassed anyway. I don't think we should be, we should treat each other like human beings and get on. But the reality is, it's not that way. And so I think it's good that they finally thought about talking about equality. So Nicola, do you want to go first?
Do you know what's really interesting is only a few days ago I got invited to speak, because it was kind of Women's Day week, on the imposter syndrome, and interesting. A lot of people will come up to me after talks, or they'll connect to me and said, hey, I got that book, or thank you. But when I talk imposter syndrome, I probably have more people than any other talk, or I feel better about myself, or I feel more positive. So I think there's kind of two things. I promise I'll get back to the topic. One is that we've got, it's like the Windows XP is new compared to our brain, and it's not really easy to reprogram, and that's really then got this like veneer of society that we shove on top of that. 150,000-year-old brain says, go find people that look and think and talk like you because they're your troop. And our logical brain says, but that actually isn't going to make us, and it's going to mean that we're not as resilient, and so that there's this disconnect between the two. And then you on top of that stick things like imposter syndrome, where we've almost been conditioned not to put ourselves forward by society, and that it's kind of a recipe for disaster in terms of fast movement towards equality. So I think that there's a mix, changing the way we talk about equality to be in more about, less about us and more about the people that we actually need to change, which sounds, in my opinion, apart from the suffragettes, and they had to get pretty radical to get change, or Rosa Parks sitting on a bus and being banged in prison, their officers immediately get banged into prison for their radicalness. So if we're going to need to be gentler, and that's kind of how we are at the minute in terms of how we're talking a bit more in terms of what's in it for you to disadvantage yourself so that we can be equal, because that's the reality. For one set of people to rise, in some ways the other set of people have some level of loss, and that I think is what's happening. You get a lot of people that say, well, I want equality, but actually what about the men, what about this? And is what you want logically then doesn't feel in your heart fair to you if you're one of the people that have privilege, and that's a bit of a challenge. So I think that we will have to look at as a society to make this work, and legislation might be one of those things that help it change. It may be the right thing for the wrong reason, but it.
Yeah. Was I supposed to say something?
Yes, your turn.
Sorry, Suki.
No.
For some reason,
I
my
mean,
video
I
is
mean,
not that good.
I'm gonna just continue on sort of that same thread, because one of the things that I was at Young Coders Meetup today. I was speaking to and what was really interesting is that I gave them the line about it's not a pipeline problem, because people are always talking about, oh, there's not enough talent. And I'm like, there is enough people that have the power don't want to recognize the talent that's there. They don't want to recognize the talent that's coming, because it means that they have to give up their power.
Yeah.
And when they give up their power and they're equal, then they had to give up power in order for somebody else to step into that. And the fact of the matter is, there were more women in the world, so why would it not be equal? But the thing is,
Yeah.
so it really is about giving up power. And until we have a structure in society where they have more wise women in those positions of power, I don't think we'll ever get to true equality. I don't think, and if it does happen, then it's still going to be somewhat biased, because and that's acceptable, and what's the perceived norm. So it will probably, when equality does happen, it will have to be in waves. I don't think it's ever going to be a black female that is autistic and has vision problem in a wheelchair being in power. Not going to happen. It's going to probably female that is white in order for that to first change. And unfortunately, we're seeing it happens, and then it's sort of skewed backwards, because They didn't like when we had power. I mean, Margaret Thatcher, they didn't like that she had power. I mean, and I'm not a big Margaret Thatcher fan, but they vilified her. They absolutely crushed her because she had power. And they saw what, because things happened, maybe not the way that most women wanted to happen, but they happened. Change occurred.
Yeah.
And then they fought back. And you see it within the tech industry. It always to fix companies in any industry. I mean, it's always a woman that comes in to fix a company. It's, Meg Whitman going in to fix, HP. And every time they need to fix something, they get rid of the women because they saw it's fixed. We fixed it. Women, we fixed it. That's sorry, that was just my little mini rant because I was actually looking at some data earlier.
Yeah. No, I agree with
Everybody's
that
talking about who's
completely.
coming in, to fix something. And it's always the women's names are floated. Like, oh, you want to give us power now because you messed it up.
And if you ask too many questions, then you're also trouble. That's the other thing also. They don't like women asking questions, too many
No.
questions. And some of the other things I've seen is that when you get to the top level, yes, you're more open to doing supporting others, helping others. But right at the bottom levels of the people who are really starting their careers and who are in the middle management levels, you see that they lack self-esteem and confidence, and that's one of the reasons that they don't support each other. When there's another woman who's joined the team or someone who's trying to work with you, you become a complete bitch. Okay, I don't want to support this person. No, you find faults in it, and you're becoming, competition. I see that happen a lot of the times, and I think that's part of the reasons we are where we are now, because it has to. I believe equality should start at home. You have to start within, and also your family, and then comes to your friends and networks, whatever the teams that you work with. But if you're treating someone
Nicola,
else, yeah.
Nicola, have you found, so one of the things that I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed it also, is that because we're sort of programmed by society, we're repetitive, that it seems like when you do get into a professional environment, when you're in school, they always make it seem like if you're competing against another girl, it's wrong. If you're competing, it's wrong. We're compete. And I think that sort of carries over into your professional environment. So luckily for me, I was saying earlier, I don't recall my mother ever telling me I'm the oldest. So and so it was kind of like, just, you can do whatever, just, don't hurt anybody, don't kill your brothers, don't burn the house down, don't, you can play with whatever, you can do whatever, just don't do anything bad. And when you go to school, you can do whatever you want, just, don't hurt anybody.
Yeah.
So it was a different mindset of went into the workplace. I was sort of like, oh yeah, yeah, there's girls, I can compete with them. Yeah, there's the boys, I definitely have to beat them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
I think we
competition
have to
is.
be,
Sorry, go on, Nicola.
sorry, I was going to say, I think we have to be a little bit kind to ourselves in terms of competition, because competition, part of that is so acceptable, what's not acceptable, how people behave. And if you think about it, women in boardrooms is comparatively a new thing compared to men in boardrooms.
Yeah.
And how we get 10 years to really become a senior woman in the industry, my overnight success of 10 years, then that's a learning curve, and there's probably only 2 or 3 curve, if that, compared to 10, 20, 30 generations of guys being able to see, well, how is this done? So, we've got to be kinder to bash each other if we get it wrong, and get labeled with labels, or whatever, because we're still all learning how to be competitive, and on top of that, how to be. One of those things is it's always in the interest of the person who is privileged when we put ourselves in silos. So for
Yep.
me, it's not about women in difference and in all kinds of ways in the boardroom, and that's what I support. If some of that happens to be women, so I'd be supporting the Black woman in a wheelchair who, I don't care. What I want is difference in thought in my boardroom. So I mean, we're actually 50-50 in gender balance, but I still look around our boardroom and that's it. I mean, we're still all white. So, you know, I'd love more difference in our boardroom. But you know, we're working on it. So the other thing is that there's a lot of people out there that want to be inclusive and they want to be fair and they want to give people, you know, that phrase of we hire for their ability. Makeup is, yeah, that tick box. But the reality is people genuinely often believe that they want to hire for ability, but they're not aware of what their unconscious biases are. So they're like that because, you know, so I often say to people, if you've got anybody in recruitment and you're using an external company and they say, we're a diversity in terms of recruiters, and they haven't put their team through something like the Harvard bias test, then they're not a diversity inclusive company.
Or their team is.
The team isn't diverse, you know, so, you know, at the very least, they should be saying, go to the Harvard bias test, take the test, see where you are in terms of women engineers, or different ethnicities versus your own ethnicity, or different religions versus your own religion. Because if you want to mitigate your own unconscious bias and you don't even know what that is, you just can't. Tons of stuff like that where people pay lip service and have really, really good intent, but they just don't follow through. You know, they don't do the CV analytical things that says it's men, and they don't do the Harvard gender test, and they don't kind of look at their makeup compared to, say, their region's makeup. You know, if some areas of the UK, it's a much better ethnic mix, but is that reflected in your organization? If it's no, then okay, what aren't you doing? So, you know, just stuff like that, actually proactively doing stuff as opposed to talking about it is kind of where I am.
Yeah.
Action.
Action. Yeah.
Action.
It's just too much words sometimes. Everyone talks about it, but can you show us actions? And then that's where it happens. It's a lot of things are tick box exercises, and people don't even. I've worked talk with people who are from different cultures, and then some of the companies don't even realize that they need diversity, equality in their teams. They got like, yes, bunch of men in the team, it works, if it's functional, we don't need anybody else. And that's kind of the mentality, but they don't know what they're missing out. What happens if you change that around and then improve your productivity, performance, everything. They don't even think, they can't think beyond that. So that's kind of sometimes what I've seen. And I have a habit when I see this kind of groups and pictures, I go and, like, pick on them and say, do you think that it's diverse, or have you not thought about it? But they don't think about it until you point it out. So they don't even know that it's wrong or there's something missing. I mean, how do you address that kind of mindset?
So there's one example I like to give when I'm speaking to people, and it is X-ray machines, so metal detectors, because I think the new variety of metal detectors has not, I think just in the last few years, and that really wasn't about anything other than the fact that they wanted to figure out what liquids people were carrying and what type of metal. But for the longest time, I mean, metal detectors for quite a while, they hadn't changed. And women have had underwire bras for quite a while. And so when you go through a metal detector, it was kind of like, oh, yeah, underwire bra. And it's been consistent. And it's only been maybe in the last 2 years that metal detectors now don't detect underwire bras. Some of them still do, but a lot of them don't anymore. But meanwhile, men's belt buckles were not going off. Men's shoes which had metal tassels, nothing. It was always women underwire bras. And we tested about 7-8 years ago, a bunch of us, we said, okay, we have 10 women and we had 6 guys. We made the guys keep on their belts. And this was before 9/11. We had the guys keep on their belts, and the women, we were like, make sure everybody wears underwire bras. And all of the women went off and had to get wanded. And the guys went through, belts on, nothing. It was before 9/11, so people weren't taking their belts off, but they were fine. And it was just like the mindset of those people that are designing things like that. It's, all guys. They didn't think about underwire bras. They weren't thinking about the metal that goes into bras, which is different than a belt buckle. And they were just thinking, oh, it's fine. And so it's just those little things that we have in society that people aren't aware of when they are talking about the changes that need to occur in what's going on in engineering. Those little things, building design, the way that somebody designs a bathroom, women's bathroom, like our sanitary pads, like those bins suck. Who designed those bins? And then when you're designing a bathroom, you would think that you would design a bathroom where they would fit and they wouldn't be the same size as the men's bathroom. Because the men's bathroom is exactly the same size, but the women have to have that sanitary bin, which cuts down on the size. Who knew? Who knew?
Many bruises from bins.
Exactly. Exactly.
So the same, I will raise that often, because this is what I mean when I'm talking about you have to make it in the interest of the people that are privileged to think about diversity. And the easiest way I've found to make people go, oh, okay, maybe that's something we should do, is to talk about the cost of failed projects. So the first Apple Watch only worked for men because they forgot about periods and the fact that it changes our body temperature.
Yep.
Who knew? The Amazon 4-year project to help speed up recruitment, and then it automatically discriminated by design because they'd hired mainly men for 11 years. So the AI went, oh, you must want men then. I'll discount women's chess club champions and people that have gone to all girls schools, and just chucked masses of really potentially great applicants out because they had ovaries, that kind of thing. And the thing is, there is not only a cost in terms of lost revenue, there's also a cost in terms of the embarrassment, because that thing is still being talked about in all of these presentations.
Exactly.
And things like the gangs matrix would be another example, just not about women this time, but about the fact that a huge proportion of people in the gangs matrix, like 70-something%, are young black males, but only 20-something% of actual gang violence offenders are young black males. So if you do want to talk about discrimination by design in data sets, and then AIs learning from that data, that would be a prime example.
Yep.
And I can guarantee you that if they'd have put people that would be affected by that technology into the room, even as non-exec directors, then somebody would have spotted that. You don't spot what doesn't affect you. You don't spot wheelchair ramps if you're not in a wheelchair. You won't spot where the AED is if you don't have a heart condition, and you won't spot huge amounts of bias if it doesn't affect you. And that's why when you look at presentations given and they go, here are our development team, and you go, you've got a problem, and they go, what problem? I can't see a problem. It's like, have you not noticed we're all like white men, and you're designing something for the whole of society? So it's just like, hello. But yeah,
that's always happened. I think we are reaching the last 15 minutes. I
I'm
think
just like, oh, we didn't mean to be so negative.
it's Women's Day. You can say whatever you like.
Keeping it real.
Yeah.
Because if you're able to point it out early enough that this is going to be a consequential cost if you don't address it, then it will be addressed, because it's a cost, it's a physical cost, rather than a program for empowerment. It's a, oh God, we're not going to be competitive and we're going to suck at whatever we create.
First rule, right? There's the two rules: show me the money and show me the data. It's always about numbers. And if it's money, then people definitely hear.
But I would like a shout out to, there's a couple of funds that I know are now not investing in organizations that don't have gender representation well covered on their boards. And that is a great move, because that will mean that businesses will have better gender representation, because they will want to access as many fund pots as possible. So that's a great move. And I think that funds that are starting to do that, not only are they woke in terms of, yeah, that's good for us as a fund, because statistically it's more likely that we'll get a good return, but they will help drive change. And we need more people to do that.
Yeah.
How can individuals, as women, how can we contribute? Because I think some of the things that we wanted to talk about in this topic is building self-esteem and confidence. As individuals, what can we do to contribute to that and get eventually, we have equal opportunities?
I do think mentoring is valuable, but I don't think that mentoring blanket wise is valuable. I always think there's a trust factor in there when you're mentoring, that you can do it to a group, but I don't think it works as well. I always think the one-to-one relationship, because then it's stronger. But I think mentoring, not just women mentoring women, it needs to be women mentoring men also. Um, and men have always mentored women, but there's not very many women have mentored men. Well, I wouldn't say, but a large number. And I do mentor a lot of men, because it really comes down to just making them aware of what is different, the power dynamics, their relationships with how they're dealing with their bias, how they're really how they see society. Because sometimes we'll sit down and have a conversation and they're like, oh, I didn't think of it like that. It's like, well, why would you? You wouldn't be thinking of women in that way. I always tell people about the fact that from the age of puberty, when we first get our menstrual cycles, and this is like the biggest, because it's the main difference between men and women. It's that difference that we can say, look, there is a line here when you first start menstruating as a woman, that your whole concept of how you spend extra money changes. Once you're out of the home and you're now a single woman living away, you're always thinking, that extra money I have, when you're a broke student, you're like, okay, I got to make sure I have enough money for my sanitary pads and my tampons. So that extra 10 pounds, you're like, I can't drink that. Whereas a guy is thinking, beer money. We're thinking, I can't drink that because I got to make sure I have that extra money. And that's just one of those ways about women saving and women investing, and people saying, oh, I don't want to invest in a female company. It's like, are you kidding? Money management is something we've been doing since we left home and we had to fend for ourselves and make sure we had money to pay for our sanitary pads. So what gives? And I explain that to men that I mentor, and they go, I never knew that. I never thought about that. And then when they're looking at the women they work with, and they're looking at the financial aspects of people, the financial structure within their companies, and they go, well, yeah, I don't know why I wouldn't have a woman that works on a finance team. Fintech companies especially, they always have a woman in sales and marketing or whatever. And I said, why would you not have a female CFO? Why would you not think about that? The fact that they have that more of that ability. Yeah, women squander, so do men, but it's just a different mindset. But I do think mentoring women and men, advocating for people that are in positions where they really have power. It is really supporting So I'll be quiet now because Nicola, you need to say something.
No, I was enjoying everything you
No,
said.
it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we've actually got a female FD, and she's one of the most amazing people I've ever worked with. So I'll test your theory on her and see if she has a horrified look, or whether she goes, oh yeah, that's where it started with menstruation. So
it's true though. I mean, you think about it, you got to
Oh my
think
God.
back, but it's true because
That might be why I got in trouble. I just, took a job so that I could drink and do that other stuff.
yeah, but so did I, but
Yeah.
but
So
it is one of those differences between a 19-year-old woman and a 19-year-old boy and man, whatever, it is.
they've got other things, haven't they, though? Because they've got they often think that they have to, pay for things that and stuff like that, and so there is stuff there. But I was going to say that from my point of view, one of the things is there is the competition in the boys' world, but they also have quite a lot of networks that is established around, pub drinking, for example, and things like that. And our networks are different, and I don't necessarily think we should model our networking on the guys' network, because we do things differently. So, I am on social media a lot, and I've got a lot of really capable leaders in our industry and other industries that are female, and what I love about it is whenever one of us is doing something great, the others will magnify them. And I've made it a personal mission. Actually, the MBE would be a really great example. So this morning I started an honours nomination for a female that I admire, and I'm going to connect with some of the people that are our mutual little group, not sort of, hey, would you do a letter of recommendation? Because actually, women didn't become astronauts until they saw a woman in space. And then suddenly there was a whole generation of engineers and computer scientists, because they saw that it could be done. And a lot of women went into politics when Margaret Thatcher became prime minister, because they were like, okay, it can be done. And I think sometimes we talk to the next generation of women as though there aren't any blocks. And I don't think that's always honest and fair to them, because at some stage they're going to find those blocks and they're going to feel like nobody warned them. So I often will talk to women and say, please come into our industry. And you also need to know this. There's going to be a load of people that will support you, but there's also this stuff that we're still dealing with. And you have a choice on how you see yourself, because I'm going to see you as a pioneer, just like I see myself, because we're still taking that flag that the suffragettes started with and moving it forward. It may be a more incremental game we're playing now, but we're still moving it forward. And I think when we see each other as that, and it's also not just women on the field, it's every underrepresented group, every marginalized group. How can we be marginalized when we're 50% of the population? I don't know, but we are. And that's great in some ways, because it means we can join with neurodiverse people, we can join with people of different sexualities, we can join with every group that feels marginalized and saying, me too, let me support you. And I think that's where we gain, and that's what we can do. We can be role models that are perfectly flawed and vulnerable, and say it's okay to be so.
Thank you. I think we got 10 minutes more. Does the audience have any questions? If you guys want to come on, unmute yourself and come on video, you're welcome to do so.
Or are you all scared because Suki and I keep jumping on soapboxes and going, ah?
One of those days, those young kids, man, they got me fired up. Nothing like talking to some 14-year-olds and they're just like, yeah, yeah.
That's it. I'm the same whenever I talk in groups, and then I'm like, oh my goodness, if you're the next generation of people, everybody should be scared. You're going to be so awesome.
I told them, I said, women, we're actually 51% of the world's population. And some girl, she goes, well, actually, I think it's like 51.7. She's like quoted the exact number. And I was like, Okay, I stand
And
corrected.
would have fist bumped, except with the virus going around at the moment. You just said, "Yay!" Just virtual high fives.
Yeah, well, you know.
Oh, well, this is the argument I also say, like, where was it gone wrong, I was listening to this. You see article about my rant later on about equality. I've just
Oh
started it. I
no.
got so angry when watching that video. I thought I'm going to write about this, and it's nothing about the tech stuff. It's about losing your virginity, right?
Gosh.
And then
Yeah.
people being judged because you didn't have the blood on your wedding night on your sheet, and then that to prove yourself you were a virgin. I just got so worked up, and I thought, are we still in this era that you're talking about that kind of
Yeah.
backward mindset? And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just started
Yeah.
the article, and it's going to be a very harsh one, but I think I will have to,
Oh,
make
you
it a
know.
bit nicer.
The
Clive, you
voice
have
of
to say
reason.
something.
The voice of reason.
Yeah, I mean, this happens in a lot of cultures still, right? The women are being judged. It's a way of control, really, pretty much. So if you don't, so there is a tradition in certain cultures. On your wedding day, they give you a piece of white clothing to play on your bed, on your wedding bed, so that so that you can prove your in-laws and your husband that you were a virgin because you bled. And that's how you get judged whether you are good personality or not. And that's a way of control for a lot of cultures, and people are still believing that. The sad part is that women also believe that it's the case, and they're thinking that's where their place is in the community. So how do you come out of that? If you're still believing that that's your worth, and that's what you've been you know categorized into, how do you come out of it? Because it just you're now it affects your confidence, it affects everything what you stand for, right? And how it's about building that self-esteem, and also
Mindset.
mindset to think this is bullshit. You
You
need to move
gotta
away
you gotta
from that.
start, and that's I think that's probably one of the scariest aspects when I was speaking to these kids earlier, was just that the people that are teaching them, you have some people like us in the industry, and we have a different way of thinking, and then you have some teachers that are there and they still are thinking in that the older way, where
Yeah,
they believe that girls should be wearing dresses and pink, and they're only supposed to play with certain things, and they're not allowed to do coding, or they shouldn't be in a workshop or woodshop class, and they are still teaching, and they're teaching these young girls. And some of these young girls were like, oh yeah, I have this teacher and she's always telling me this, I just ignore her. But there are teachers that have a lot more power, and they're able, and that's why I think you get the majority of society still in that perpetuating that mindset, because the teachers are teaching these kids, and then these kids believe that when they come out of school, and their parents are still doing that same. It's just this cycle, and it's a
yeah,
matter of how do you break that cycle. When can you break that cycle? Because a lot of these young girls, when they get to they're really quite outgoing in the sense of I'll do anything, and by the time they get to 10 years old, they're like, oh, I can't do that. And then
yeah.
when they get to 14, I definitely can't do that. And it's just a matter of how do we break that cycle? And
It's a
I,
vicious cycle, I think.
yeah, I think society's changing, and it is changing slowly. I just would like to see it, you know, the exponential growth factor be a lot more like the coronavirus than it is than society. It's like, why can't it go that fast?
I know. Any thoughts on that, Nicola?
Oh, it feels like throwing a starfish on a beach, doesn't it, sometimes? Do you know
Yeah.
that story of it's a beach full of starfish, and people are there's this one guy throwing starfish into the water, and somebody comes along and says, what are you doing? you know, you can't make a difference. There's too many starfish drying on the sand, and the person says, I made a difference to that one. And it feels a bit like that. And
Yeah.
I think you just have to use your reach as much as you can, whenever you can. And so there's a friend of mine, and he's got 2 daughters, and he said to me, how can I empower my daughters? You know, how can I expose them to the right kind of influences? And I said, well, what videos do you show them? You know, which Disney ones do you show them? Do you show them Tangled, or do you show them Sleeping Beauty? Because one of them's waiting for a prince, and one of them's smacking the guy around the head with a frying pan. And I know which one I'd be showing them, you know. And, you know, and I bought them some books for Christmas, and they're Rebel Stories for Little Girls or something like that. And my one of my prouder moments was that he brought them into our offices, because I arranged for them to come. He's got, you know, I think they were about 6 and 7 or something like that, and they came round, and I introduced them to various women in different departments of our organisation. So the finance folks, and sales folks, and marketing folks, and then some ladies in the coding team, and just like all different people, so they could see you could do whatever you liked. And then I gave them these books. And I asked them, you know, what's your favorite? And one of them then said Amelia Earhart. So a 6-year-old knowing who Amelia Earhart was, and it was
Awesome.
that she was her favorite. And then she was talking about how women are really clever, because the other one was saying about that. And then she looked at her dad and she said, Daddy, boys can be clever too. And I was just like, this is so awesome. And her dad sort of looked and said, oh, that's good. And is Daddy clever? And I think she said something like, sometimes. Oh my God, you're awesome. I love you. That's it. I mean, it's the more women leaders that are visible, the more this will happen kind of naturally. And I think that's really important. And it's one of the reasons I always am really open about being autistic, because it's hidden. So if I'm not going, I'm autistic and I'm a leader and I'm a woman, and, you know, these are the struggles that I have and this is how I deal with it, then, you know, that person that's maybe sitting at home thinking, I'm going to be blocked from being successful, isn't going to be able to say, hey, that's me. I could be that person.
Yeah.
And it's why I did the Amazon book with other women leaders. You know, all of the women in that book have faced some kind of obstacle that they've overcome, but they didn't only smash the glass ceiling, they kicked the door down, made their own boardroom and rocked it. You know, you've got the founder of Nosh, you've got the woman that started the first sperm bank, you've got me somewhere in amongst all those amazing women. And, you know, this is really important, that we share that it's not always easy, so that people feel that they can have problems and overcome them. And I think that's all we can do, is our best.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with that. I always say, you know, start thinking like you're a leader and also act like a leader. And also be transparent. It's okay to sometimes be vulnerable to things and be open about it, because that's when you can show other people, look, you know, you don't have to be perfect. You can have mistakes. You're not perfect. You can still do amazing things, but you know, you can still be correct your mistakes, learn from your mistakes. But it's human nature, I think. And you're completely right on this. We are kind of run out of our time, so I'm going to cut it short. And I wanted to thank you both so much for coming in and then launching this IWD series. We got some amazing females lined up for the whole month. So we're doing a IWD whole March of a lot of people joining us for podcasts. So and you've given your time on a Sunday evening. So that's awesome. Sorry, go on.
Make an offer or say one thing?
Sure.
So on Twitter, I'm CyberGoGiver. And if anybody either encounters this podcast now or after, and they've got a burning question that they didn't feel comfortable asking out loud, I'm really comfortable with somebody sending me a DM and saying, hey, I'm facing this, and if I can help, I will.
Yeah, I think you should do it. All of us, connect.
Yeah.
You can stop people and then ask questions. I think that's what we are for. We are a
Yep.
community to, create a safe place for everyone. So that's what CISO stands for.
And
Doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. It's all open, and then we are here to support and help. So
I'm gonna add in that I'm Suki Fuller, just my name, on Twitter and on LinkedIn. Just feel free to ask a question if you need something.
Well, just follow Suki. Her feed is way better than mine, I've been told.
Oh, I don't think so. I've been a little lax lately. I have. I've been in this watch and read mode, and it's sometimes, I always tell people sometimes it's better to just watch and listen to what people are saying. You don't always have to chime in and jump in
okay,
sometimes.
cool. I'm on just like and retweet mode. That's all I do on Twitter. So just don't expect much from me. But I'm very active on LinkedIn. So anyone can contact us, and there's a whole CISO group if you want to join. And we run monthly mentoring calls also on every third Tuesday of the month. And tune in. We are going to be running a whole IWD campaign. And I just wanted to thank everybody, Suki and Nicola. It was such a pleasure to have you. Thank you for giving your time. And I also want to thank my company for enabling us to do this and sponsoring. And yeah, if you want to get involved, give us a shout. You can volunteer, you can sponsor, you can speak. Pretty much open for any collaborations. And the other one I wanted to say is we're going to be planning to host a boot camp in London in July. Hoping coronavirus doesn't disrupt us.
Can be online. Can be online.
Yes, that's something that we are looking at as well, but it's not as effective as being in one room and having so much fun. So if you want to get involved, email us at info at sheciso.shecisoexec.org. Too many emails, I can't remember these things. And yeah, so just last one, wash your hands and keep clean. This is the time you have to wash your hands like crazy. Don't catch coronavirus. And yeah, thank you so much, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Behave yourselves.
Just stop recording.